think it's a game.
Hi, so this is my main inquiry blog page. So the central elements that I'm focusing on for my inquiry project. If you don't feel like reading what's below in its entirety, then you can just watch this video and get a quick overview of a few minutes. So let's get started. So the quote right beside this video is by J. Cole. I thought that was relevant. I love J. Cole, and he says a lot of things that are very relevant to education and ways of life, and how can what he's saying change my thought, which is what I want to do with my project. That's the goal, and that's the aim, to challenge my current pedagogy. Okay, so my research is grounded in 3 central topics. Those topics build off into several themes. So the first topic is inquiry. I read the Bible a lot, and a lot of the most brilliant people in the world have had questions, and answering those questions, they became the wisest individuals to walk the face of the earth. So I'm seeing how much my students can learn from questioning. We're all gonna take a journey into education just in experimenting with this project. Our graduate studies are built on education, and I think that it's something that we're all going to incorporate in our separate projects. So I thought it was worth mentioning. Dewey talks about devoting ourselves to education and finding out how to make it a reality. I think that that's an important aspect of my project, to not only find myself, but have my students find themselves and their role in education. I want my students to be able to interact in their curious states of mind and see how far I can get them to go. Emden in For White People Who Teach in the Hood, and the rest of y'all too, talks about cosmopolitanism, and I think that that's going to be a big part of my project, just because generally people think that questioning is all about discovering things on your own, and I want to challenge that thought by arguing that questioning is collaborative. I always talk about cosmopolitanism in my papers just because I think that it's super important in how we run our classrooms. So the central themes, they kind of build on and off of each other. The first will be student-centered learning. According to Lowton, it involves collaboration, interdependence, exploration. I do want my students to collaborate, but I also want them to be dependent on each other and be resources for one another. I don't want to be the central resource in my classroom. I want them to have enough confidence in themselves to be able to want to discover things for themselves and use each other to be able to build off of their own inferences. Another thing that I think will be interesting is seeing what type of role agency plays in my project. Tashalis and Nakula talk about agency as part of kind of building natural need and want for learning. I think that when my students start to become reliant on each other and confident in themselves, they will naturally build agency, and in building agency, they also become more collaborative and interdependent and confident in themselves. I think that agency definitely needs to be present in order for a classroom to be student-centered. The second theme is deepening learning through inquiry. So Tashalis and Akula also talk about cultivating the immeasurables in a lifetime of recognizing and exploring one's ignorance, and I think that that is kind of the essence of inquiry, just a lifetime of exploring. My students, they're 16. There's a lot of things that they don't know and a lot of things that they want to question. Parker and Hess define it as delimiting inquiry, which is the intentional back and forth between thinking and doing, reflecting and observing, and theorizing and experiencing. So my students should be having this sort of ebb and flow between explore and question, and it'll be like a never-ending process of questioning, doing, and thinking. Beside this video, there's a link to visual structures according to how I just defined it. So you can just check that out. I'm curious to see which one of those structures will accurately reflect my classroom. And additionally, as I've stated before, I think that inquiry should be and can be a collaborative process in which students create dialogue around text and writing and things like that. As Parker and Hess indicate, it's a journey for my students to embark on for this year. The last theme is cultivating an effective classroom environment. I've been working on just cultivating a copacetic classroom for the entire first year. I think that we're all familiar with the Effective Learning Environments paper. I say that comfort, instructional consistency, and collaboration are 3 key elements. I am specifically talking about creating an environment where students aren't afraid to question. Michaels, O'Connor, Hall, and Resnick argue that habitual questioning is a strategy that grounds knowledge of a particular subject, but I also would argue that it is a strategy that cultivates and breeds student-centered inquiry. The humanities department is largely grounded in history. I'm thinking about ways that I can teach my students to extend creativity and build on their curiosity about a certain topic. In terms of consistency, Weinstein talks about being consistent with instructional goals, because that's how people learn. From my research, I think that it'll be important to engage students in my classroom in the norming process, in which they're constantly questioning, constantly collaborating, constantly discovering, and constantly reflecting. That is the essence of how they learned this year. I wanted to really explain what I wanted to research and look at before I came to a definitive question that I would be confident with. And so my question is, what happens when I create a classroom environment that cultivates student-centered inquiry? And I did what happens instead of how can I create, because I can just use literature and research to be able to answer that question. So I wanted to ask a question that I'd really be able to dig deep into, and something that was ongoing and changing. I want to be able to discover just like my students are discovering, and have that process be ongoing. What do we want education to look like? That isn't just a question for me to answer, but it's something that I'm challenging educators with. And that's because it's such a broad question for us to ask ourselves and us to ask each other. Dewey talks about education being pure and simple, and that's the way it should be. So I'm still confounded by this duality. I'm still looking for ways that I can define education in my own way, while also helping other people. And that's just going to be something that I'm going to probably continue to work on throughout my career as an educator. But I hope that this gave you all a little bit of a glimpse. There are links beside this video to the data source tools that I plan to use and to the visuals that I was just talking about earlier in the video. And thank you for watching.
I feel your pain, therefore I slang this hope shit and give you lines that you rewind and think, oh shit. These rappers talk a lot of money, cars, and whole shit. I give you that and then a whole lot more shit. That got rich and still rapping like I'm post shit. You niggas think you know shit, man, you don't know shit. Hope bitch, yeah. Cold bitch.